according to some reports, are about 90% done. So this is one of these glass way more than half full stories, or is it that final 10% that'll really be a problem? For today, there's some optimism, no doubt about that. Mercatus Center Senior Research Fellow Veronique Rugy joins us. Swiss America Trading Corp Chairman Craig Smith is here as well. So the optimism, at least Craig on the stock side is winning out today. But I've been trying to make that point. Is like it's great to say you're 90% of the way there, if that's even true. But in any kind of big negotiation, it's the last 10%, right, that can be tricky.
Sure, and I think the biggest part of the last 10%, Colin, is the enforcement mechanism and our ability or our being able to lay down the tariffs if they violate. I have no doubt in my mind, Colin, that we will see the Chinese violate this agreement. You can take that to the bank. It's a question of, do we have the enforcements and the mechanisms in place to punish them and make sure they come back into line when they do violate it?
See, you can correct mistakes and you can get back on track, and that's what we need in these negotiations. Colin to Connell, and then we get the negotiations figured out. You know what I mean? So like the whole thing can be worked out. That's my
I'm sorry, my friend.
I'm kidding around. Veronique, your take on this is what? Because we have heard before that we're making a lot of progress, but to Craig's point on enforcement, it seems like what the United States is pushing for is something China might be reluctant to go with, that, hey, you can leave these tariffs in place, or more to the point, you can put the tariffs back in place and you guys can't retaliate, you guys being the Chinese. I still keep finding it hard to believe that they'll actually go for something like that, but who knows? We're not on the inside of the talks.
I agree with you. And first on the progress, right? It's hard to know really how much progress we've made. We've seen with the renegotiation of NAFTA that the final product wasn't as transformative as the president hoped, which I think is a good thing. And here it's like the president is asking for very hard things that China will definitely not want to deliver fully on, like seizing industry subsidies. As for the enforcement thing, it's like I do hope that actually China prevails on this, and that those tariffs, which are a burden on mostly American consumers and manufacturers in America who are importing a lot of inputs from China and paying the cost, that these tariffs are lifted. And that was the problem all along with the way the president went about this fight, by putting tariffs that hurt Americans.
Well, and
really,
if history's a guide,
he
won't necessarily pull them back. I mean,
exactly.
And that's what USMCA, I think, taught us to some degree.
Exactly.
And people sometimes forget about this, Craig, but when they were negotiating this new NAFTA that Veronique referred to, not everybody, but a lot of people said, as soon as they have a deal in place, the steel and aluminum tariffs will be rolled back. But that hasn't happened. So I don't know if that's a model or not, but what do you think?
No, you're exactly correct, and we didn't see those rollbacks occur. And I think, look, the president has made it clear his weapon of choice is tariffs.
Yep.
And so we're saying, if we're going to enforce this, if you violate, we're going to come at you with more tariffs. And the Chinese are saying,
but what if you leave them on? What if you leave some of them on? I mean, would you support that, Craig? Or?
Actually, in the first $250 billion that he put on at 10%, I would agree to that. And then once they prove that they were abiding by the agreement, then I would remove them. But Connell, we have to have something in place to make these guys play by the rules, because they have a 50-year track record of cheating.
No, I get that part of it. I get that part of it. And that is a good question, Veronique. So if it's not that, then what is it? There does need to be some way of enforcing this whole thing, whatever this whole thing is.
There's no silver bullet, and that's the reality. And we're trying to pretend that there is, but there isn't. And multilateral agreements are actually like TPP, which again weren't perfect, was a way to actually put a lot of pressure on China. I mean, whatever the administration says about the WTO, actually the WTO process has had a lot of effectiveness in getting China to comply.
Yeah. So what are you supposed to do? Just trust them?
Tariffs, yes, but the
trust the Chinese, you're saying? Just trust them?
No, you don't have to. No, you shouldn't trust the Chinese. You should actually go at them with all the options that we have that are not punishing to American consumers. And the tariffs. Well, so as I said you actually build a coalition with other nations, and you actually TPP was going to put tremendous
pressure on China. That ship has sailed, right?
I mean, actually, other countries are moving forward with it.
No, but from our involvement in it.
So you go through the WTO. There is no silver bullet, and to try to pretend that we can, or that tariffs, which are a burden on Americans, is the way to go.
Last word,
unfortunate.
Violations of the WTO in the past, Connell, have not been met with strong punishment.
Right.
And look, there was one thing in this whole.
I mean, that's our problem. That's fault.
But there's one thing I have to bring up, Connell. This is critical.
Okay.
I have heard very little about the whole issue of currency manipulation. If we get the best deal in the world and we don't hold them accountable on currency, mark my words, their beggar thy neighbor strategy will continue, and they will continue to rip us off through devaluation of their currency.
All right, we'll come back to all this. We'll stay on it, as a matter of fact, throughout the day, but we want to move on for now. Veronique and Craig, good to see you both. Thank you very much. And the story we're moving on to are these Hollywood stars up in Boston heading to court